Let me show you something. Of course, if you're watching this, you probably already figured it out, but if you click on the lecture, you get this screen right here. There you go. Okay. If you get this screen, all you have to do is click on this right here, and it'll take you right to YouTube and and the lecture. And of course,
Talking about this is the first chapter,
whoops.
or yeah, this is the first day. So we're
Okay.
going to be talking about.
Anyway, there you go. That's how you do it. Like I said, if you've already seen it, then you already know what I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and get started with this lecture. Not a very long one, not a very long chapter. We're going to talk about culture and human nature. Humans are quite particular about whom they choose to imitate. Humans are said to have prestige bias. They're especially concerned with detecting who has prestige. That is, they seek others who have skills and are respected by others, and they try to imitate what these individuals are doing. And of course, we have examples. There's everybody trying to look like Marilyn Monroe, and everybody's trying to look like Dolly Parton. I don't think she's in there. There we go. And everybody wants to look like Elvis. These are people that we imitate: Marilyn Monroe, Dolly Parton, and Elvis. Imitating prestigious others is a very efficient way of cultural learning. Individuals are more likely to learn successfully if they target those people who are especially talented. Identifying signs of prestige and then imitating people who displayed those signs are skills that we were likely selected for in the course of human evolution. So we've been doing this for as long as humans have been around, identifying with and imitating people of prestige. Our ancestors who did this were more likely to acquire the highly successful cultural knowledge that gave them a survival advantage compared with those who did not. This has to do with clothes. This is one of the reasons why there are fashion magazines so that we can imitate the people that we admire. Uh, a group that doesn't do this are the Amish. But then again, they probably do it as well because their clothes look an awful lot alike. So they're probably imitating each other as well. Humans have what is known as a theory of mind. A theory of mind means that people understand that others have minds that are different from their own, and thus the other people have perspectives and intentions that are different from their own. Imitative learning is where the learner copies precisely what they think the model is trying to do. Emulative learning is where the learner is focused on the environmental events that are involved. The emulative learner is only focused on the events that happen around the model, not what the model intends to accomplish. In emulative learning, you learn one task but can't use that knowledge in any other context. Human cultural learning is cumulative. I got to kill this fly, and he flew away before we could get him. Cultural information grows in complexity and often in utility over time. This is called the ratchet effect. Like a ratchet, it always moves forward and is not allowed to slip backward. And that's the way humans have evolved, always moving forward, never moving backward. Cultural information can continue to accumulate without losing the earlier information. However, it hasn't always happened that way. To have cumulative, and we're going to talk about that in just a second, to have cumulative cultural evolution, you need creative invention, reliable and faithful social transmission. High fidelity social transmission requires accurate imitative learning and sophisticated communication. No species but humans have shown these capacities. The larger the group of people, the better cultural information can be maintained and improved upon. You're more likely to encounter a successful model to copy from out of a larger group than out of a smaller group. And this is one of the reasons why if if you're dealing with basketball, this is something that has happened in Indiana. Indiana used to have a all schools tournament every year. That was the state tournament. It was all the schools, the big schools, the small schools, the tiny schools. They all played in the same tournament, and usually the tiny little schools got knocked out, and usually the smaller schools got knocked out, and it was the big schools versus other big schools. But one year, the year that is depicted in the movie Hoosiers, one year a tiny little town actually won the state basketball tournament. It wasn't Hickory; it was a team from Western Indiana by the name of Milan. They won the basketball tournament against my hometown team, actually. And it was a bit of a surprise. It was David versus Goliath, the whole thing. So usually, it's the you can find better basketball players in a large area rather than a small area. You're more likely to encounter a successful model to copy from out of a larger group than out of a smaller group. There will be more innovations that come from a larger group than from a smaller group. So a larger group will be more likely to have at least one person stumble on a good idea. Looking at Polynesians settling the South Pacific, the islands with the largest populations at the time of first contact had far more different kinds of tools than the islands with the smallest populations. Bigger populations allowed for the more rapid spread of cultural innovations. However, sometimes the ratchet slips in the population will lose ideas. Now, this is very rare, but it does happen. This happened with the Aboriginal population that inhabited Tasmania from the Australian mainland, and this is where almost all of the Aborigines from Australia are from. And this is Tasmania down here, this tiny little island. Or it's not a tiny little island, but it's a smaller place. When Europeans initially arrived in Tasmania, they found scattered foraging bands of humans utilizing the simplest technology. Archaeological digs have shown that the technology seen in their past was far more advanced than what was demonstrated in their current technology. Comparing the Tasmanian Aborigines with those across the Bass Strait in Australia, the Tasmanians maintained a toolkit of only 24 items, whereas the Australians maintained a toolkit of hundreds of items. The Tasmanians had lost bone tools, cold weather clothing, fish hooks, and boomerangs. Other groups where the ratchet seems to have slipped include the Melanesians of the Torres Islands north of Australia, the reclusive Siriano of Bolivia, the reclusive Piraha of Brazil. Humans are a cultural species that exists within worlds consisting of cultural information that has accumulated over history. Cultural ideas greatly influence the ways that we live our lives, determining much of what we do on a daily basis. We are all born into rich cultural worlds, and we are constantly learning and being influenced by the shared ideas that make up our culture. Our brain size is determined by the encephalization quotient, the ratio of the brain weight of an animal that predicted for a comparable animal of the same body size. For humans, it is 4.6, or that we have a 4 to 5 times larger brain than another mammal of our size. Only the tiny but big-brained shrew has a higher ratio than humans, and they maintain a brain that accounts for 10% of their body weight. Our brains consume about 16% of our basal metabolism, even though our brains only represent 2% of our body weight. The brain of the average mammal only consumes 3% of their basal metabolism, but as humans, it's 16%. The brain of the marsupial only consumes 1% of their basal metabolism. And the only marsupial you have probably seen is this one. Australia, that's all they have are marsupials. But in the United States, the possum is the only marsupial we have on the North American continent. In order to maintain the massive human brain, the trade-off was shrinkage in other areas. The chimpanzee's muscles are 27% larger than humans. This is a chimpanzee. Our guts, stomachs, and small intestines are 60% smaller than that of the chimpanzee. That's why his stomach sticks out, and that's why ours is flat. One reason humans were able to reduce their digestive needs is because we were able to learn to do some of our digestion outside of our bodies. We learned to cook our food. Cooking substantially increases the amount of energy that can be extracted from food. It denatures protein, it gelatinizes starch. It makes all food softer and easier to digest, thus requiring less energy. Because of cooking, humans are able to consume foods that cannot be eaten raw. This reduced the amount of chewing necessary to consume food, reducing the amount of muscle required in the human jaw. It also changed the shape of our teeth. This is an ape, and as you can see, their mouth is shaped differently. This is for their front teeth are for ripping and tearing, whatever they're ripping and tearing. And these are their molars for gnawing on things. And these are human teeth. As you can see, we have no ripping and tearing teeth. It's a larger mouth. The average human spends 1 hour chewing their food a day. The average chimpanzee spends 6 hours chewing their food. By cooking our food, we were able to evolve a much smaller digestive tract, which freed up much energy to be used by our brains. Many primates eat a lot of fruit. There are good reasons to eat fruit. Fruit is rich in vitamins, carbohydrates, and calories, and fruits tend to be available in concentrated patches. To live off of a diet of fruit, you need to keep in mind where the various fruit trees are located and when they would likely be bearing ripe fruit. Perhaps the greater need for a good memory and a big brain was triggered by the need to remember fruit locations. And this is an apple tree where it's lost all of its leaves, but it's still got apples. Those primates that had better skills at remembering where the fruit was would have been more likely to eat well and have surviving offspring than those who were stumbling around about aimlessly trying to find ripe pawpaws. And that's what a ripe pawpaw looks like. A number of primate species rely on food sources that require a fair bit of ingenuity to access them. Some primates' food sources include nuts and seeds encased in hard shells, tubers that need to be dug up, termites that need to be fished out of termite mounds. Extractive food sources, such as the ones just mentioned, are often worth pursuing because they are rich in protein and energy. Those primates who were able to extract nutritious foods were more likely to survive and produce viable offspring. Most primates live in complex social groups, maintaining clear power hierarchies, allowing them to form various relationships and alliances. Conflicts as well as cooperation, nepotism, and reciprocity are common. Humphrey and Dunbar have hypothesized that it was the necessity to navigate through the intricate and elaborate webs of social relationships, the need to attract a mate, secure resources, and protect themselves and their offspring that led to the development of the big brain. Dunbar analyzed the relationship between neocortex ratio and average group size and estimated that the average size of the human ancestral population was 147.8. Looking at subsistence societies still in existence, Dunbar discovered that the average clan size was 148.4. In 2011, Facebook did a survey of its accounts and found that the average number of friends that people had was between 120 and 130. The same year, Twitter analyzed their accounts and discovered that people could maintain between 100 and 200 interactions. Any groups that are larger than 150 become too unwieldy to manage without some institutional structure. Yet smaller groups lose their advantages of large numbers. Although primates are highly social mammals, in many ways humans can be said to be an ultra-social species. Humans tend to be far more engaged with others around them than do any other primates. We are constantly attending to what others are doing. We gossip about others all the time. Our behaviors are guided a great deal by what others around us are doing. We learn by imitating others. And these are people imitating, waiting for a train. How do you wait for a train? That's how you do it. Everybody looks kind of the same. In an experiment by Dean et al. In 2012, the researchers compared the ability of a chimpanzee and orangutan versus a 2.5-year-old solve a physical problem and a social problem. The child and the great apes performed equally well on the physical problem at about 75%. This is a chimpanzee, and this is an orangutan. However, for the social problem, when the subjects had to follow a model, the 2.5-year-old was more likely to follow precisely what the model did. The great apes tried to solve the social problem through emulation. Most of the humans scored 100% on the social problem, while most of the apes scored 0%. So no matter how reclusive an individual or a group of humans are, culture and the biology of human brain are bound inextricably. Humans evolved to be a cultural species, and we imitate each other, as all these guys are wearing blue paint. And that is it. So I'll talk to you again next week.